somebody asked, what do you think of his victory? I said, it's unbelievable. So it's believable, or you can take it two ways. Unbelievable. For me, it was not believable. And so that was, that's where I decided, man, I can't even watch cycling anymore. I couldn't watch it. And the following year when he won, David Walsh was almost exposed him with Ferrari's training with Ferrari. Armstrong heard about it, preempted him, said he was using Ferrari for training for the hour record. But anyways, and David had tried to call me. I said, you're looking in the right place. Anyways, and by chance, I just, without looking at the number, I answered the phone. It was David Walsh. And I said, hey, David. He said, Greg, I want to get a quote. I want to talk to you about the victory. I said, I don't have anything to say. I said, my mom told me if I don't have any good to say, don't say it at all. So I said, really, I don't have anything good to say, so I'd prefer not to talk. And he said, well, okay. Wouldn't you think that his comeback, if he's clean, would be the greatest comeback in the history of sport? And I said, absolutely. And then he said, well, if it wasn't, like he says, he said, well, I said, well, it'd be the greatest fraud. So it became my quote, even though the first part was with David and I just answering, the opposite. And boy, that just, man, I got called. Armstrong called me a week later and threatened me. The irony is, he said, why'd you call me a fraud? And I said, I didn't. I said, if you're clean, you're the greatest comeback in the history of sports. He admitted that he was a fraud to me. So, but that became a really difficult period because I had a thriving bike business, Trek. I was threatened that was going to shut down. I thought, okay, I'll just bide my time. That's going to end. He's going to get caught, and never happened. But it became clear that I was the enemy to Trek, and because I wouldn't go along, I wouldn't be part of the support group, and the irony
also highlights at that time how much cycling took off in a commercial sense, because we have you on one side, one of the greatest riders in the history of the sport, having retired with a completely untainted reputation. Given a quote, we have Armstrong, who's come through, he's a post-Festina affair rider with some quite dubious allegations around him. But the money and the financial interests have gotten so big in the period between you retiring and this Armstrong period of dominance that it's impossible for anyone to nearly break this bubble of silence without doing massive financial harm to themselves. We've, Bell helmets putting pressure on you, Trek putting pressure on you, and it's all just self-serving financial interests.
Yeah, you find the world's driven by that, though. I would have really profited had it gone along with it greatly. But it was just something that was so black and white. Had I not been told that, had I not been told at this dinner that what was happening, I wouldn't have an inside proof. I wouldn't have anything to really, it would have been just innuendo. It would have been just kind of rumors.
Would you not have guessed this, considering it's 99 and Festina's 98, and you probably are still quite well connected in the pro peloton at that point?
No, I wasn't. Actually, I was not. After I got done with cycling, because the EPI just decided I'm not going to follow it, I was so happy and then quoted as the best in L'Equipe in 1998. This could be the best thing that happened to cycling Festina. Everybody thought it was going to be the worst, but I thought it needed it. So I actually gave that benefit to Armstrong because, in theory, if it's clean, if the drugs controls are, if you've limited it, that you're going to, maybe his natural talent did rise to the top, and maybe he wasn't able to do that in the 90s, in 95, 96, because everybody else was an EPO. So that was my optimistic view. I do not look at riders and go, oh, he's cheating. I don't. I really look at the best of every rider. But once you get firsthand knowledge, it becomes like black and white. The real big deal, the real thing that got me in 2001, though, I was at a sports conference in Austin, Texas, and not Austin, Texas, San Antonio. I was supposed to do the Ride for the Roses with Armstrong the week before. He disinvited me. Said I was drunk the year before, which I wasn't, but he decided I was the enemy. because I had critiqued Dr. Ferrari a month before the event. Anyways, but I was at the sports medicine conference, and Dr. Ed Coyle, who has done testing with him since 1991 till he turned pro, his ego, whatever it is, he was supposed to talk about ergogenic aids like drinks and stuff, and he pulled up a slide of Armstrong, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and he showed a graph of his oxygen intake, 5.7 liters of oxygen. He showed his weight in the first 2 or 3 years, which he did lose 3 or 4 kilos between 91 and 95. By 1999, it was only a kilo difference, not enough to make up that difference. And then they had a line from the lower left to the top right was mechanical efficiency. And they used Chris Carmichael as the expert who knows nothing, honestly, made a business out of fraud. Anyways, he claimed, his improvement was his mechanical, his body somehow 1 in a trillion somehow defied physics and physiology, that he improved 15 to 20% his mechanical efficiency. That's why he did well. It proved not to be the case. But what was shocking is that his 5.7 liters of oxygen translated his weight was a 78, 79 VO2 max, which meant no way in hell could he win the Tour ever. And it was such an average. So remember, I'm 68 kilos. I've taken 6.4 liters of oxygen. He takes
because
5.7.
you can deduce someone's power to weight ratio based on their oxygen uptake capacity, is it?
Oh, 100%. Our power output in aerobics is only is driven by your oxygen. It's how much. Remember, if VO2 max is it's critical because a high VO2 max allows you to maximize your aerobic capacity. If you're poorly trained, you might not reach that peak. The secret is your sustainable output should go as close as you can to your VO2 max. So you're about 90% of your O2 intake sustainable. So if I have a 92 VO2 max, even if I'm not really well trained, I should beat riders that are in 85. I look at that my Tour de France in 1990. I had mono. I didn't come in there even close to my good shape, and I still won the Tour. And that's why I said I was very blessed. But at 5.7 liters of oxygen, that's basically I'm more than a half a liter more oxygen at a lower weight. So I thought, oh my God, the watch Ferrari bragged about him doing 475 watts of the 500 watts of Madone. 500 watts at his weight would take over 100 milliliters of VO2 oxygen, VO2 max. That means he'd have to sustain in the 90s for 30 minutes. He had a 78 VO2 max, impossible. And so Hotakam, he averaged 475 watts, impossible. Even today, you can see riders. I will guarantee if you looked at their wattage on their computers, they're not sustaining more than 400 watts. You're seeing 420 watts, 440 watts because somebody's estimating that based on their watts per kilo. But their wattage output, remember, it's your weight to power ratio. Let's say when I was climbing, if you look at historically, most riders at a sustainable up was around 400 watts. That's over 45 minutes. You go short than that, 15 minutes, you can do 430, 450 watts. So, and I even argue with David Walsh. I mean, you talk about all these stories, but it's physics. It's like physiology. There's certain things you can't. The sport's been so competitive for so long, and there's been data produced. There is no miracle. There's no secret training. There's no secret diet. When I raced at the time, the diet was probably more balanced in the 80s. I would still eat the same as today, except I would be forced to starve myself and lose muscle mass.
A lot has come out in the wash, in the last decade with, Armstrong holding his hand up and, apologizing to a bunch of different actors were in it. Did you ever get an apology?
He wanted to, so I arranged a meeting in San Francisco. I forced him to sign a confidentiality agreement. So yeah, we met with his attorney and my attorney, and we signed confidentiality agreements. I knew that would drive him crazy because he wanted to say it publicly, but I did want to see if he was going to be honest with me. because I had information from a lawsuit with Trek that I knew that he was with Trek working to basically shut down my fitness company and other businesses. And I saw files on it accidentally. And I asked him, were you ever working with John Burke on this? And he lied to me. He said, no. I said, well, I know you're not being truthful because I saw the documents. I saw messages between you and John Burke. And so I knew he was not being honest. And he never really said, I apologize. He said, he said, he'd never apologized. He said, I just got caught up in this big energy, this movement. And so he couldn't apologize. He didn't know how to. So,
do you think that relationship is dead in the water, or is it anything you would ever consider fixing?
No, never. Oh my God, no. He's not one to ever have a friendship with. Absolutely not. Zero chance. But the irony is, about 2 months later, he finally revealed that he tried to make it like he apologized to me, even though we had a confidentiality agreement. I knew he couldn't handle that. He had to leak it. So no, I would never consider any cordial relationship with him.
This was an extract from my podcast with Mr. Greg LeMond. If you want to check out the full conversation, you can click here. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.